2025, has been such a weird year for horror. Like, we had big names come out, Sinners, Weapons, movies that everybody was hyped about, right? But honestly, do they really deliver in terms of being scary, being truly scary? I don't think so. And that's the whole point of horror. I mean, if a horror movie can actually scare you, then what are we even doing here? So here's the thing. Sometimes the films that don't get the big hype, they're the ones that actually sneak up and wreck you. Like, in my opinion, Bring It Back 2025. Not a lot of people were talking about it when it dropped, but to me, that was one of the most genuinely terrifying movies of 2025. And I'll say this, it was a strong year for sequels. We had, I Know What You Did Last Summer, The Conjuring Last Rites, and Final Destination 6. Those franchises know how to keep people showing up. But at the same time, it feels like Hollywood's running out of, fresh ideas. They just keep banking on the old names. Think about it, like I remember back in 1973, The Exorcist was groundbreaking. It terrified an entire generation. Then decades later, along comes The Conjuring in 2013. A brand new idea at the time. It got some from The Exorcist, but a brand new idea at the time, and it completely shook the genre again. But honestly, if you look at the 2000s, man, that decade might have been the real golden age of modern horror, in my opinion. We had Insidious, Sinister, like redefining supernatural scares. The Ring brought J-horror into the mainstream and messed people up for like weeks. And Paranormal Activity, which was one of my favorites, which made us afraid of our own bedrooms with just a camcorder. Then you had brutal stuff like The Hills Have Eyes and Inside from the French cinema that pushed limits with raw, disturbing imagery. Even underrated gems like Lake Mungo, Case 39, and Orphan. Those films showed that horror could still surprise you. And that's what's missing now. We know horror can reinvent itself because we have seen it happen. So it makes you wonder, why don't studios take those risks anymore? Hopefully, 2026 gives us something bold again, because horror is at its best when it surprises you. Just like the Bring It Back movie with, something new. But alright, let's get into our list. Starting off with the least scary on here, movie number 20 is The Ugly Stepsister 2025. It's actually a perfect movie, but in terms of being truly scary, nah, I'll tell you why. Elvira lives in the shadow of her beautiful stepsister, Agnes. Their mother, Rebecca, pushes Elvira into brutal cosmetic procedures, dangerous weight loss methods, even swallowing a tapeworm, all to make her worthy of attention and love. As Elvira sinks deeper into this twisted transformation, the rivalry, pain, and desperation bleed into horror. This one stands out because, I think it takes a fairy tale and turns it into a grotesque commentary on beauty standards. You feel every second of the shame, the desperation, and that ugly pressure to be perfect. It's not just body horror for, shock value, it's that real fear of changing yourself just so someone might finally look at you. I believe it gives us the same vibe of Substance 2024. If you haven't watched it, go and watch it, definitely. It's a very good movie. It's not the scariest thing on this list, but it's absolutely worth watching just for how raw and messed up it gets. The overall score for it is 7.2 out of 10. In my opinion, it's disturbing, emotional, and uncomfortably raw. If you're loving these pics, hit like and subscribe. More killer recommendations are coming your way. The second on our list, number 19, is I Know What You Did Last Summer 2025. This story picks up years after the original events.
We are not gonna die today.
With a new group trying to outrun a secret that should have stayed buried. A familiar hawk-wielding figure returns, but this time the danger feels more personal, like someone's been watching them for far longer than they realize. And instead of going for non-stop gore, the movie leans into the classic slasher formula, like night chases, tense phone calls, and that creeping paranoia that the killer is always one step ahead. Where it struggles is, I think, originality. It plays things very safe. You can tell the studio wanted nostalgia over, risks, but the suspense works. The kills are clean and punchy, and it actually understands the tone of the 90s era instead of mocking it like so many modern slashers do. And just so you know, I made a full review breaking down the good, the bad, and the wasted potential in this one. If you want to save that for later or add it to your watch list, it's already up on the channel and linked here, if I'm right. Yeah. So, it's not the scariest horror release of 2025, but it earns the number 19 spot for keeping the slasher vibe alive, without turning into a parody. And for reminding us that suspense doesn't always need, buckets of blood like Saw. The overall score for it is 5.2 out of 10. It's a good watch, familiar, tense, and a solid throwback for classic slasher. Next on the list is 18, The Monkey, 2025.
In its most devious ways.
The story centers on two brothers who discover a toy monkey from their childhood, the kind with the little symbols that clap together. And every time it goes off, someone nearby dies. What starts as a creepy memory quickly turns into a curse that follows them into adulthood, forcing them to confront something they never really escaped. The movie leans on, atmosphere more than spectacle. It uses silence, timing, and that unsettling childhood nostalgia to make deaths feel inevitable instead of random. There are a few jump scares, but what really works is the dread. The way the monkey shows up in moments where you least expect it, like it's always watching and waiting to strike. Now, it does have some uneven pacing. The first act takes its time, and not every scare lands, but when it clicks, it taps into that primal fear of cursed objects, like The Ring or Annabelle. But less scarier. Where, you're not fighting a killer, you're just fighting the fate. It's not the goriest or loudest horror movie of 2025, but the concept, the creepy execution, and the, fatalistic tone earned it the number 18 spot, and the overall score on the Hitchcock's picks, I would give it a 5.5 out of 10. It's eerie, slow burning, and perfect for fans of supernatural curses. 17. Obsession, 2025. Burr works at a music store and finds this creepy little supernatural toy that gives you one wish. Instead of money or fame, he uses it to make his old friend and co-worker, Nikki, fall in love with him. And at first, it actually works. She starts acting like she is really into him, but it doesn't stop there. That love turns into full-on obsession, the kind that gets violent and dangerous fast. It's not just awkward or uncomfortable. It's, the wish twists everything around them, and the people in their lives start getting pulled into the fallout. What makes it, in my opinion, Obsession stand out is how it mixes something as simple as a crush with a cursed object and turns it into a kind of psychological nightmare. It's not about ghosts jumping out. It's about what happens when love becomes possession, literally. And the more Bear tries to control it, the worse it gets. Not the scariest one here, to be honest, but it definitely messes with your head because it feels way too real until it doesn't. So the overall score for this, I would give it a 5.8 on Hitchcock's score. Out of 10, it's uncomfortably intense and the kind of horror that feels like a bad decision you can't undo. Number 16 on the list is Around the Decay, 2025. So, Around the Decay is about this woman who goes back to her hometown because her fiancé disappeared in the surrounding woods. But the town has this creepy history nobody wants to talk about, and the deeper she digs, the more it feels like something old and angry in the forest is still very much alive. And it knows her. The tension in this film is relentless. It doesn't rely on gore or cheap scares. The slow descent into paranoia and the clever use of the environment make, everyday spaces feel like traps. If you like the platform or some parts of Hereditary, I could say, then you'll love this one as well. Not as good as Platform or Hereditary at all. It earns a number 16 spot because it proves that fear doesn't need blood. It only needs a mind unraveling at the right pace. So the overall score for it would be a 6 out of 10. It's tense, unsettling, and a masterclass in creeping dread. Number 15, Presence, 2025. The movie follows the Pine family as they move into a quiet suburban house. The kind that looks normal and at first glance, but never really feels empty. An unseen presence watches them from the very beginning, getting closer to Chloe, the daughter who's still grieving the death of her friend, Nadia. What makes Presence work isn't loud scares. It's the way the haunting connects to the family's cracks. Doors close on their own, shelves collapse, and the entity subtly protects Chloe from the people around her. Especially when things start turning dangerous. The tension builds slowly, but when the truth about Ryan comes out, and what really happened to Chloe's friend, the horror hits a lot harder than expected. This isn't a jump scare movie. It's the kind that sits in the room with you, quiet, watchful, and waits for the right moment to strike. And the final act pays off with a twist that makes the haunting feel tragic instead of evil. It's not the scariest film of the year, definitely, but the atmosphere, emotional tension, and slow burn dread, earned Presence the number 15 spot. And the overall score for it on Hitchcock's Pixar scale is 6 out of 10. It's quite unnerving and more human than it first appears. Number 14 on the list, Final Destination, Bloodlines. The new installment goes back to what made the franchise iconic. Death doesn't chase you. It waits and it watches and corrects its mistakes, one accident at a time. This time, the characters survive a catastrophic event in the opening, and from there, the pattern begins. Subtle signs, impossible coincidences, and freak accidents that feel way too intentional. What Bloodlines does right is, leaning into the anticipation. You're not scared because something jumps out. You're scared because, somebody's about to die, you just don't know how. And the setups are tense, creative, and brutal without going full torture. And there's a connection to previous films that fans, will catch immediately without it feeling like a lazy callback. Definitely doesn't reinvent the franchise, but it doesn't need to. It sticks, to the formula in a way that actually works. And the deaths feel, way more suspenseful than CGI driven. If you grew up with Final Destination, and it is one of your favorites just like me, this feels like a proper return rather than a reboot. It lands at number 14 because it's, entertaining, tense, and delivers exactly what you expect. Not exactly bad, it delivers, even if it doesn't reach the nightmare fuel of the early 20s. I mean, the original movie. The original was definitely the best in the franchise. So the overall score for it on Hitchcock's Pixar scale is 6 out of 10 again. It's tense, bloody, and satisfying for fans of supernatural death trap horror. Definitely the people who are a fan of Final Destination in general. 13, 28 years later, 2025.
Rolling up and down again! That's all the stars in the world!
The rage virus is back, but this time, the world isn't caught off guard. Decades have passed since the original outbreak, and humanity has tried to rebuild around the trauma. But containment never lasts forever, and once the infection resurfaces, it spreads with the same speed and brutality that made the first film so iconic. Instead of focusing only on survival, 28 years later leans into how society has changed and how quickly it can collapse again. The infected aren't just background monsters, they're fast, relentless, and shot in a way that keeps you on edge. The cinematography brings back that rough and frantic energy from the original without turning it into shaky cam chaos. It earns a number 13 spot because it respects the legacy of the original while dialing the tension back up to where it belongs. It's fast, feral, and unforgiving. And the overall score for it, I think, would be a 6.6 out of 10. It's intense, fast-paced, and the closest the genre has come to real panic in years. Number 12, Wolfman, 2025. The story follows a man who begins losing chunks of time, waking up injured, surrounded by signs of violence he can't explain. At first, it feels like a psychological breakdown, but as the attacks grow bloodier and more animalistic, it becomes clear that something's taking over his body when the moon rises. Wolfman doesn't rush to show the creature. It builds the suspense through sound, aftermath, and the fear of transformation. What earns this spot is the tone. It treats I think lycanthropy like a curse, not a costume, and the fear comes from losing control of your own body and becoming the thing that haunts in the dark. And so the overall score for it's a very good movie. I think I would give it a 6.2 out of 10. It's tense, primal, and a true return to serious creature horror. Number 11 on the list is Dangerous Animals 2025. This one puts you right into Zephyr's nightmare. She's an American drifter and surfer looking for a thrill. So she signs up for Tucker's shark cage adventure. But when the boat leaves shore, she realizes Tucker isn't just eccentric. He's a sadistic predator who uses the ocean and its creatures as his weapon. You feel every second of her panic as she's trapped in the middle of nowhere and surrounded by sharks and a killer who knows the water better than anyone. It's all about how she has to outthink him and survive, not just the ocean, but the man controlling it. It's number 11 because it turns a familiar adventure into a terrifying survival fight, which is also thrilling rather than being scary, to be honest. And so the overall score for it, I think, would be a 6.5 out of 10. It's really intense and suspenseful and relentless in its realism. Number 10, The Gorge, 2025. Levi Kane, an American mercenary, and Drasa, a Lithuanian assassin, are stationed on opposite sides of a remote gorge. At first, it's just another mission, another assignment. But when a mysterious dark force emerges from the depth, they realize surviving might require more than skill. It might require trust. Slowly, connection forms between them amid the tension and danger, blending suspense, action, and unexpected romance. The Gorge stands out because it doesn't just rely on the threat of the unknown. It makes you feel the isolation, the stakes, and the human connection in the middle of terror. If you like horror that mixes action, romance, and tension without, resorting to cheap jump scares, this is for you. It earns the number 10 spot because I think it balances atmospheric horror with emotional depth, giving you both suspense and heart. And so the overall score is 6.8 out of 10. It's a very well-built movie. I mean, it's tense, atmospheric, and unexpectedly moving, and has a new idea, which I love about it. Number 9, Together. One of my favorites. Tim and Millie, portrayed by real-life couple Dave Franco and Alison Berry, relocate to the countryside seeking a fresh start. Their relationship, already under strain, faces an unimaginable test when a mysterious force begins to warp their bodies and bound them together in horrifying ways. What starts as a physical transformation soon reveals deeper psychological and emotional entanglements, forcing them to confront the very essence of their connection. Together stands out by, merging intimate relationship dynamics with grotesque body horror, creating a narrative that's, both unsettling and deeply emotional. If you're intrigued by horror that delves into the complexities of human relationships and the physical manifestations of emotional bonds, or Plato's philosophic ideas, then Together offers a unique and thought-provoking experience. If you're interested in a deeper analysis also, I've already reviewed Together on my channel. Feel free to check it out later or add it to your watch list. It's already here. Yeah. Earning the number 9 spot, Together is a haunting exploration of love, identity, and the terrifying consequences of being unable to separate oneself from another. The overall score on Hitchcock's Pixie scale for this one is 7 out of 10. It's a very good movie, deeply unsettling, emotionally charged, and visually grotesque. Number 8, a very popular one, Weapons 2025.
Come on, what am I looking at?
In the quiet town of Maybrook, Pennsylvania, 17 third graders vanish simultaneously at 2:17 a.m., leaving behind only one student, Alex Lilly. As the community grapples with the mystery, they uncover a dark force tied to Alex's enigmatic aunt, Gladys, a dying witch who manipulates others to sustain herself. The narrative unfolds through multiple perspectives, including Alex, his teacher Justin, and grieving father Arthur, revealing a web of supernatural influence and hidden agendas. Honestly, Weapons was seriously overhyped, in my opinion, when it dropped. Critics on Rotten Tomatoes gave it a 100% score in its early days, and a bunch of YouTubers were raving about it like it was the scariest thing ever. And here's the thing, it really doesn't deliver on true scares. This is my opinion. But don't get me wrong, it's still a fun horror movie to watch. It's a very good movie, definitely, with clever twists and deeper themes if you pay attention. It's more about atmosphere, tension, and psychological layers than jump scares, which makes it satisfying in its own way. If you're interested in a deeper analysis, I've already again reviewed Weapons on my channel, so feel free to check it out later as well. Again, it's linked here. So it earns the number 8 spot in my opinion, because from now on the scary movies has begun. I mean, these movies are really scary. So it earns the 8th spot for its compelling mix of supernatural elements and psychological depth, offering a kind of fresh take on the horror genre. And so the overall score for it on Hitchcock's Pixie scale is 7.2 out of 10. It's eerie, cerebral, and emotionally resonant. Number 7 on our list, another popular movie of 2025, Sinners. In the 1930s Mississippi Delta, twin brothers, Smoke and Stackmore, returned home from World War I to rebuild their lives. They planned to open a juke joint to bring hope and music back to their community, but soon awaken a dark supernatural force that thrives on fear, guilt, and the sins of those around it. As the brothers navigate ambition, family, and survival, they confront horrors that are as psychological and moral as they are terrifying. Another movie that critics ate up. Again, 100% on Rotten Tomatoes in its early days, people were hyping it like it was revolutionary. And sure, it was good, and it is good, but to be honest, the horror itself, not exactly shocking. It's more of a slow burn, psychological kind of thing mixed with historical drama, supernatural elements, and definitely strong performances and, societal messages for the society. Critics loved it, and I get why, but don't go in expecting nightmares. If you're drawn, to horror that's disturbing, atmospheric, and emotional resonant, this one is for you. It earns the number 7 spot for its originality, definitely, tension, and the way it blends real-world stakes with supernatural dread. And the overall score on Hitchcock's Pickett scale for it, I would give it a 7.3 out of 10. It's haunting, unsettling, and unforgettable. And number 6 on the list is a lesser-known movie that I think a lot of people would disagree with me, but I liked it. It's 825 Forest Road. After a family tragedy, Chuck, his wife Maria, and his sister Isabel moved to a quiet town looking for a fresh start. But the house they sell in isn't just any house. It's connected to the ghost of Helen Foster, a woman who died decades ago and whose spirit hunts anyone struggling with grief or mental pain. As the strange events escalate, Chuck and Isabel team up with Isabel's friend Luke to uncover the truth behind 825 Forest Road, a house that doesn't even exist on the maps anymore. What makes this one work is the slow burn tension. It's not about jump scares, definitely it has a lot of them. It's about that creeping dread that makes you, question every creak and shadow. By the time the hauntings reach their climax, you feel the isolation and fear alongside the characters. It earns the number 6 spot for its atmospheric horror and blending supernatural chills with emotional weight. And the overall score, I would give it a 6.4 out of 10. It's a slow, unsettling, and deeply haunting. Number 5 on the list is It Feeds 2025. Again, another controversial pick, I think.
Cynthia, wake up! Ah, where is she?
So, a terrified young girl bursts into a home psychiatry clinic, claiming something is feeding on her. The therapist's own daughter senses something wrong too. And when her mother, who has a sort of sixth sense, sees a dark presence behind her daughter, saving the girl suddenly becomes intertwined with saving her own child. Now the therapist must confront her personal demons before the entity consumes them both. It Feeds stands out by mixing psychological tension with supernatural dread, and I like it because of its new, brilliant idea. It leans on atmosphere, eerie visuals, and slow building suspense instead of cheap jump scares. The overall score for it on Hitchcock's Pickett scale, I would give it a 6.5 out of 10. A good movie. It's eerie, emotionally charged, and psychologically unsettling, and definitely a bit scary. Number 4 on the list, another very popular movie, The Conjuring: Last Rites. So this one is basically a new case for Ed and Lorraine Warren, the Smurl family, which was said to be the most terrifying case of all. If you'd like to see what were the true stories behind the Conjuring movies, all of them, I've prepared the video for it and you can go and watch it here or add it to your watch list for later. So the Warrens go in to help, but things get messy when their own daughter gets pulled into the middle of it, turning it into a family drama too. They have to deal with the demon, protect their daughter, and figure out how to stop the haunting before it gets worse. Honestly, this one, in my opinion, might be the weakest Conjuring so far. However, in 2025, it was one of the best in terms of being scary. If you wanna, know why I think it's the worst in the franchise, I've done a deep dive review on my channel. Go check that out later. It's linked here. So the overall score for it was a Okay, good movie in general. I would give it a 6.8 out of 10. It was the spooky in parts, some good suspense and jump scares, but not the strongest, to be honest. Number 3 on our list is an indie horror, Traumatika 2025.
You look nervous.
What have I done?
I brought it here.
Brought what?
This one follows a woman trying to rebuild her life after a brutal personal tragedy. But the past doesn't just haunt her, it starts manifesting. And instead of a traditional ghost story, the horror here feels like her trauma coming to life in real time. She starts seeing things that may not be there, hearing voices tied to what happened, and the line between PTSD and an actual supernatural presence gets thinner every minute. You know, what makes Traumatika hit for me is how it, treats fear. It's not, it's not about jump scare. It's that creeping discomfort that your mind, might be turning against you. Think more, Saint Maud 2019 or Relic than loud, flashy horror. So the overall score for it is 6.4 out of 10. It's really heavy, unsettling, and haunting in a psychological way. Number 2, one of my favorites of 2025, Undertone 2025. This story follows a podcast host who moves into care for her dying mother. When she sent recordings of a pregnant couple's paranormal encounters, she realizes their story mirrors her own, and each tape pushes her closer to madness. The horror sneaks up on you. It's in the sounds under the floorboards, the shadows that don't match, and the way the recordings make reality feel unsteady. Nothing jumps at you, to be honest. It builds in the background like the host itself is alive and waiting. This is definitely one of the scariest on my 2025 list because it messes with your brain more than your heartbeat. And I suggest you watch it with a headset or hands-free because the sound design is the most important thing in this movie. If you like horror that lingers, gets under your skin and doesn't need to scream to scare you, think like, for example, The Lodge 2019, Skinamarink 2022, or The Witch 2015. Undertone nails that same vibe for you. And the overall score for it, it's a very good and well-built movie. I would give it a 7.3 out of 10. And it's unnerving, psychological, and hauntingly tense. And as you know, number 1 on this list is Bring Her Back 2025. It's still the same. This is still the scariest horror movie of 2025 for me. And nothing that came after has topped it at all. In my other video about the scariest movie of the year, I said Bring Her Back was number 1, and I'm standing by that. And no other 2025 release, in my opinion, has come close to the level of dread this one pulls off.
Listen. Listen.
The story follows 2 step-siblings, Andy and Piper, whose dad dies suddenly. They're placed into foster care with Laura, a woman mourning her own daughter. But Laura's kindness has a dark side. She's secretly involved in occult rituals, pushing Andy and Piper into things that blur reality, control, and supernatural horror. Laura uses an old VHS cult tape, weird rituals, and manipulates their lives to try and resurrect what she's lost. What makes Bring Her Back so terrifying is how real it feels. The grief, the denial, the desperation. It all makes the supernatural elements hit even harder. The atmosphere never lets you breathe, and the tension keeps building until you feel like something is in the room with you. I said it before and I'll say it again. This is the one movie in 2025 that genuinely got under my skin. And the overall score factor is 8.2 out of 10 because it does the one single job, which is to scare the audience as a horror movie perfectly. It's haunting, emotionally brutal, and the closest thing 2025 has the real nightmare fuel and a brilliant new idea behind this movie. And that wraps up the main list. So before we end this video, let me, give you the honorable mentions as well. Movies that were good, interesting. Some of them are very good, actually, or at least worth keeping on your radar, even if they didn't crack the top 10. Number 1, The Woman in the Yard, 2025. Ramona is a widowed mother who was injured in a car accident that killed her husband. She cares for her 2 children, but their quiet life is disturbed by a mysterious woman draped in black who appears in their front yard. Not the scariest, but the creep factor and mystery keep you hooked. Definitely worth watching if you like quite supernatural tension. Number 2, Heart Eyes 2025. A masked serial killer known as the Heart Eye Killer stalks romantic couples on Valentine's Day. In the film, 2 co-workers are mistaken for a couple by this killer and become targets of his spree. It mixes modern tech paranoia with classic, slasher beats, and while it's not groundbreaking, it's fun, violent, and has a couple of clever twists that make it stand out. Number 3, Opus 2025. So, a young writer travels to the remote compound of a legendary pop star who mysteriously disappeared 30 years ago. Surrounded by a cult of sycophants and intoxicated journalists, she soon finds herself in the middle of his twisted plan. Not a jump scare movie, but it messes with your head in a good way. It's a good watch. Number 4, Drop 2025. It's psychological horror and thriller, but mostly I could say thriller. It's about a widowed therapist, Violet Gates, starts dating again but begins receiving mysterious, threatening messages via a feature called DJ Drops. The messages escalate, making her question who among those around her is watching, manipulating, or dangerous. It becomes a game of trust, betrayal, and paranoia. The whole movie is basically tension in one single restaurant, I could say, and it does a lot with very little. It's a new idea. I like new ideas. Not top 10 material, but absolutely effective and worth a watch. Number 5, Dream Eater 2025. A fan footage horror film following a couple's retreat to a remote cabin where sleepwalking incidents lead to terrifying discoveries. The film's innovative storytelling and eerie visuals have, garnered positive reviews, drawing comparisons to classics like The Blair Witch Project and Paranormal Activity, and even It Feeds 2025. Almost the same idea in both movies, but this one is also a very good movie in terms of being truly scary. Number 6, Good Boy 2025, one of my favorites. A horror film told from a dog's perspective. Again, a very brilliant idea. Something I want from Hollywood more. So the dog tries to protect its owner from malevolent forces, supernatural forces, in a haunted house. The film has, received critical acclaim for its unique narrative approach and emotional depth, with a 95% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. And that wraps it up. Thank you for coming this far. 2025 has been all over the place for horror, but hopefully this list helps you skip the weak stuff and looking on the ones actually worth watching. Let me know in the comments what you think about my ranking, and if you want deeper breakdowns, reviews, spoiler talks. A bunch of these movies already have, their own videos on my channel. So go check those out after this one. Make sure you hit like if you enjoyed this one, and subscribe or support me if you like what I do here, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next ranking or review I drop. Alright, thanks for hanging out with me. I see you in the next one.